we remembered to record. Martha, let me know if you got your audio connected. Some of you probably have seen the video. I hope if you got a chance to enjoy it again, you might have noticed something new. We felt like this was a good way to set the tone with a lot of good news about summer coming up, and just, you know, getting another glimpse at what story is being told. And thanks again to all the programs who let us visit last summer. We are hoping to continue with this kind of storytelling piece. And so if you are thinking, a selfish reason of who's doing summer? If you're going to be doing programming and might be interested, feel free to let us know. We might love to capture some video or connect with how we might be able to help share the story. So I think there's just a slide to, again, prompt you. If you haven't yet, please introduce yourself in the chat box, and we can put in the program scan link again, just to help us see who's here and what kind of partners are at the table. The agenda for today includes a little policy and funding update. We'll have some time really to talk about priorities for summer planning, looking at kind of the work of the network and building and supporting quality through these actions, through partnership and policy, and looking ahead at you know, opportunities for this spring and summer. So there'll be some discussion in there and some slides, but feel free to drop in the chat box. I noticed in the RSVP that there were several questions about summer funding, which we will get to. And just to start though, we want to recap kind of the efforts thus far this year, pursuing kind of support for summer programming this year. So I think with that, we'll hand off to Katie. I'll skip the video since we did that.
Great, thank you, Bethany. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Leakey, and I'm the research manager at OregonASK, and I'm just going to take a few moments to talk to you about our summer learning survey. So as many of you probably know, we conducted a summer learning survey in summer 2021 with funding support from the National Conference of State Legislatures. The survey was our attempt to create a baseline landscape for what summer learning looks like in Oregon and to better understand what that $250 million summer learning package from last year made possible. So through this survey, we collected detailed information about hundreds of summer programs all across the state and identified a total of 1,770 summer learning sites across the whole state. And this is a map of all those sites pinpointed. So now we've released our full report on the survey that is available, as well as an executive summary, a 2-page infographic, and a story map, as well as a short video that we all just watched together. So you can find links to all of these documents on our website. We can also drop them in the chat, and they'll be linked in the slides after this meeting. So none of this would have been possible without all of the people who took time out of their incredibly busy summers last year to take this survey, and that includes many of you. So I just want to say a huge resounding thank you to everyone that participated in this survey. We really appreciate your time and effort. And I'm not going to run through all of the results of the survey here, but feel free to check out the report materials. We also have a recorded presentation of the results if you'd like to watch that we can share. But I do want to take a moment to review the biggest takeaway from the report, which are our recommendations. So our current summer learning system in Oregon is disjointed, and it's made up of a patchwork of providers that have little public funding in a normal year. And that system only reinforces privilege and ensures inequitable access. So when we're thinking about a coordinated system that would support youth and families during the summer months, we at OregonASK have a few specific recommendations. First, we think summer funding should be committed well in advance. Many districts and community organizations last year had to compromise on quality or duration because they didn't have enough time to plan. And we know that research shows us that planning for summer should begin in September. Second, summer funding must include direct support for community-based organizations. Nearly 60% of the organizations that participated in our survey were operated by nonprofit and for-profit organizations within the community. These community-based organizations are really making up the heart of summer learning in Oregon, and we think funding streams should acknowledge that. Third, we suggest investing resources to support school community partnerships. These partnerships strengthen summer learning opportunities and are mutually beneficial, and they increase benefits and lower costs. Yet we still saw struggles between schools and community organizations in summer 2021. And finally, we suggest creating systems for accountability and reporting. It's only possible to make improvements to a system if you know where you're starting from. And any future funding for summer learning should include reporting systems that help identify gaps in access and also help programs assess and improve the quality of their programs. So we've been sharing these recommendations as well as the full report as far and wide as we can. We hosted a legislative roundtable to launch the report on January 21st, as well as a partner roundtable that same afternoon. That partner roundtable is what we have the recording of. So if you'd like to see sort of a 30-minute walkthrough of the full report, we have that available. We also were invited to present to the Summer Learning Collaborative as well as the Senate Education Committee in February, and we presented to the CCR&Rs earlier this week, and we're planning to present to the Early Learning Hubs next week. So we'll continue to share this report out, but we also know it's only a starting point, and there's a lot more information about summer learning that we would like to have, things like the demographics of the youth served, among many others. So we continue to push for better data collection systems for after school and summer programs, and especially in relation to the big summer learning funding packages. We think it's critical to know more about where this money is going, who is receiving it, and who is being served by it. And I've been saying this a lot, but it's impossible to make effective improvements to a system if you don't know where you're starting from. And we think to stand the best chance of seeing this kind of public investment in summer learning long term, it's imperative to be able to demonstrate that the money was well used and made a difference. So we hope to build on this survey with more data collection this summer. So stay tuned. And I think that's everything I wanted to share about the summer survey. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out to me. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, for sharing. So Wade put in a comment here in the chat box on it. Invest in resources. So what does that mean? I don't know. And I think that's Beth, it's a kind way to say it's not just money, and there's opportunities for really having materials and support in place, but
and physical locations. So understanding that it takes more than just money. It takes intentionality to run a quality program. It takes training, it takes supports. And what we want to encourage is the development of really strong partnerships for summer and after school. So.
And good, very fair question. Trying to say as broad in what might come your way, but in that vein of partnerships, knowing that it's not just about a contract and fee for service. There's lots of tools and support that can go in to help make it a more authentic partnership, I think. So, but we just wanted to make sure if you haven't heard, yes, Karen, and resources equals transportation. If you haven't heard, there is an allocation currently in House Bill 5202 for summer learning and enrichment. So there is about $100 million that will go to the Oregon Department of Education for K-12 summer learning and enrichment, and $50 million that goes through the Oregon Department of Education to the Oregon Association of Education Service Districts. So
for CBOs.
For community-based enrichment programming. There we go. And so I think that is based on was a press release from Senator Dembrow and President Courtney's office talking about an investment that they wanted to see. And it is for this summer to come out sometime in the next, hopefully very soon month, that would support implementation for this summer. There is also conversation about how this can go forward. So Senator Dembro, who's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, has been very vocal about this being just the start, and that if we want to really be able to use summer for all that it could be, there needs to be a more sustainable approach. And hopefully that means there will be some investment, at least to start with, like a work group, an understanding of what kind of investments can really help shift opportunity in the summertime. So, the top bullet here is that OregonASK had our own report that had the recommendations Katie noted, but it aligned very nicely with what Oregon Department of Education found from all of the program feedback they got from the district feedback, and Oregon Community Foundation that did some kind of focus group. They heard the same thing, right? We need more time, we need authentic partnership. So thinking that we would.
And we pulled so Katie pulled Department of Ed data and OCF data into the combined report. So it was a labor of love, I hope.
And we do not yet, so Kathy, we don't know what the parameters are for this funding. We don't know what the timeline is. In fact, the last I heard, the actual package hasn't made it all the way through. So it's still awaiting final vote. But there is a conversation next week that we got invited to. So we're hoping to have a little more information after that is about how the 150 million can be allocated to support this summer in a more effective manner.
And we were thrilled to see that. So without the help of the Alliance of Wise, the Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, I want to acknowledge the Park Association with Michelle, who's here, and Marissa, who's here. It was a combined effort to help push this money through the legislature, and many other individuals that went to speak to their legislators, like Kathy Law. And so it's critical and important. And so Marissa has a little saying that she puts on all her emails, which is better together. And that is so true. So my deep gratitude for all the support of the alliances. And it wasn't just OregonASK, it was everyone together.
Yes, and the we that's at the table is actually a pretty exciting group where Marissa and Boys and Girls Club and camps are present. And so this is a collaboration so far. And if you feel like you want to let us know what your we're going to have a conversation on what do you prioritize and how do we bring that forward as a collaborative vision.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Law, did you have your hand up? You have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I think this is all super exciting for the long term. I think I speak for everybody that, if we're going to get a small amount of money or a large amount of money and it's only used for new programming versus, staffing or whatever, that's for people who are actually trying to run programs this summer. I'm sure you realize it's really critical that we know ASAP, because you won't be able to adequately perform if we don't have some kind of boundaries about what it's for and how much.
We understand.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And Christy, did I see your name also on the invitation for next week? So
you did.
I'm
Yep.
thrilled. I'm thrilled to have you there.
Thank you. They had reached out asking my thoughts about specific programming, and our position is it doesn't need to be specific. It needs to enhance existing programs. So I'm really excited to hear today about some priorities that I can also share next week.
And I think I saw earlier that Susan had put a comment around the importance of kind of trauma informed and healing centered. I just want to call out, I think that's one of the things that we have heard already is as a huge need for professional development and training for staff around making sure that there is a lens to, we are still recovering. Youth are still not back to normal. And this is a great opportunity to elevate youth voice and confidence and engagement. So.
And one of the things that we know is that there was difficulty last year in reaching children and youth that are sort of that have the greatest need. And that is because of the barriers like transportation. And so we want to try to at least have some, we're going to encourage a couple of pilot programs and specifically focused on public housing and providing supports in public housing for programming. We'd like to see supports for youth to actually work in programs. So, how that happens, be it internship. So some of the funding being able to focus on that so you could actually look at, because we know kids want jobs. And then I had a third one. So we're going to write and sort of try to put some structure on what we would like to see, because we want to be able to lift these things up. And Senator Denbrough has talked about creating a legislative work group task force to build legislation for next year. So that's going to be our priority as we hit the 2023 hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that. New governor change, all of that you have to take in consideration.
And yes, Kathy, the funding is for K-12 currently is how it's stated. And so that's where this conversation on, is there an emphasis? The 199 point something million that's going to ODE for district centered programs had a bucket that was named for K-8 enrichment and then one for high school. And so there will be, theoretically, there was likely going to be 2 buckets, one focused on the elementary middle, and then one that is more for high school that would include most likely credit recovery and hopefully some sort of internship job readiness opportunity. So that's
would they subcontract then some of the vendors that are here? Is that
our understanding is that at this point it would be similar to last year where districts were allowed to do that. And I think that's where the conversation next week, it's actually not just community partners. There is the administrators and school. I don't know. Sorry, Richard, I don't know if you all are on the invite, but COSA is on the invite. And I thought we could hear, because something that I want to throw in this conversation is, you're right, Kathy, that there is still many districts like Dan Johnson, who's here from Philomath Academy. He sits within a school program. I think Julie's here too from Central. So you get the benefit of having district funding potential, but that one of the things that we did here was that being able to partner with community organizations really broadened the opportunities. So I would invite Richard, if you have thoughts from what you've been hearing for school districts, both on like preparing for summer, or if there were other reactions or thoughts to kind of what's been happening the last couple weeks. I feel like there's a little bit of chaos potentially around like mask mandates lifting and things kind of continually changing. So Richard Donovan is from Oregon School Board Association. Richard, did you have what would you like to share with us?
Sure. Thank you, Bethany. I'm happy to talk for a couple minutes. So I'm Richard Donovan. I'm a lobbyist for the School Boards Association. And it has been a very busy few weeks. I think everybody, right? These are strange times. These are COVID times. It's been a weird 2 years for everybody. And school districts and the legislature are not immune to that at all. So in terms of summer programming, Bethany and the other folks have talked kind of actually covered most of the details. It's a $150 million-ish package, $100 million to K-12, $50 million to community programs, basically the same as House Bill 5042 last year. So the $50 million for community partners is going to run through the Oregon Community Foundation again. And the way that the $100 million is split up is through K-8 and 9-12. And those grants will go through school districts, and those will be administered by Oregon Association of ESDs. The bill is up for a hearing today, 5202. It's the budget reconciliation bill. It's the budget bill for this session. It spends billions of dollars. It's a huge bill. So it is one of the many things that are within that bill. In terms of what districts are looking at, I think that they, when we hear from districts, they share the same concerns about timing that I think a lot of folks here would share, that, it's already March and we're talking about summer programs. You're supposed to talk about summer programs in October, that kind of feeling. So that same pressure. I was talking to some superintendents earlier today, and they were saying that they really need to get going. If they're going to do this, they really need to get going. But I think that most of them plan to continue to build on the programs they've had existing since last year. In terms of other things that are going on, this has been an incredibly contentious legislative short session. Short sessions are always really hard. They're compressed. They're 5 weeks. This one has been especially so for a couple of reasons. The scope of the ambition of bills that were put up was just really high, just very ambitious ideas about what was proposed in education and other places too. I mean, education outside of this other huge investment in summer learning, there was a huge investment in houselessness. There's a huge investment in K-12 workforce. We sold the Ellie out of the Common School Fund. Usually in a short session, I work on 1 or 2 big bills. And this session, I think we were in on 10 or 12. It was just very, very hectic. And the other reason that this was, I think, a contentious session was the kind of ongoing reaction to mandates, mass mandates, kind of what some people are calling the parents' rights movement. We had a number of districts that were kind of in the news for reasons that the legislature did not appreciate. A couple of districts fired superintendents, and a couple of districts openly defied mask mandates. The mask mandates are rolling back. A week from today is going to be the last day, so March 12th. Schools will effectively no longer require mask mandates. School districts will have the option to do so. But I think many districts are looking forward to not having that mandate. And most of the districts, like Redmond was one district and LC was another, most of the districts that had posted those board resolutions to go out of compliance and not enforce mask mandates, they've, as far as I know, kind of quietly voted to reinstate them, to come back into compliance and to just go through March 11th. And hopefully this will take some of the pressure off the dialogue, even though it's only another week. Hopefully this will help kind of calm things down and keep everybody focused on that the students rather than the parents. We like to focus on kid problems, not on parent problems. And so I don't know if there's other specific lobby questions. I'd be happy to try and answer anybody's questions about specific bills or what have you, or we can just keep rolling along.
Yeah, Susan, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment, and sorry, I had to step out for 2 seconds, so I missed the end of of his speech. So if I missed something, my apologies. But just a bug on all of our ears thinking about, I remember really well when this happened before, because we're academic programs based on university. The fact of this coming to us with very little time at the university processes and internal processes, it becomes even less and close to impossible to get that established through the internal process of receive funding or work with the foundation. Like when we did it last year, we were supported going outside of the university in partnership with the Oregon community, Oregon Agriculture in a Classroom, and some of our programs couldn't submit because there is a limit. Just how the internal process is becomes the added layer that's for those of us in higher ed and academic institutions, that it becomes really challenging to be able to even receive the money in time to do anything or get. So if there is any thinking about a central support for those of us here in this call that are based on a university and education, that could be put some of those things that we know are going to be problems ahead, like how much indirect you can take out of this. How do we, it's a lot to deal with it, that the university is not prepared and doesn't really understand outside of their own internal process.
That's a very fair bug, Susan. I think even with some of the K-12 districts, it becomes that kind of system that is hard to coordinate. And some school has a thing that they want to do and they reach out to this partner, but then that partner's already working over here and doing that. So the planning piece, especially in regional and organization, would be ideal. I think that was one of the proposals, one of the pieces of the proposal we had slightly earlier in legislative session included statewide partnership support, which was kind of like a technical assistance and planning piece that we think would be really helpful. So I've heard, up from some partners in Northeast Portland that they did not have the best time because it was last minute. It was like June and they're planning for July, and then in July they got cancellations for the next week, and like things were going so crazy and quickly that it really didn't build a responsive opportunity, and that's not what we want to be able to offer. And I think that that was the mode of our report, was like it was not an ideal situation last year. And yet, as programs and people supporting youth and families, you did an amazing job stepping up to say, well, we're going to make this work. But we don't want to have to continue to make it work, right? We want to figure out what is actually going to make a better system and approach for summer going forward. And thank you. Yes, Marcus brought in here a comment on the chat box on the planning piece and space with districts and community partners would be a great opportunity, right? That might be included in what you are allowed to spend money on in the plan, in the timeline process, that you actually have some real intentional opportunity.
So to that end, we have prioritizing needs as our next slide. So we want to actually take all your thoughts, or as many as you have right now, and prioritize them so that we can speak to that.
And to get us started, because as we've already demonstrated, there's no shortage of ideas and questions and challenges. There's a quick survey opportunity that we put here because I love Google Forms. They populate automatically real quick. So there's a short list of what are some of your challenges you might anticipate or needs for this summer. And then, is there a priority you have? So is it planning time? I was going to start to populate these in our great conversation already, but I figure it's better just coming from you. Technology issues, is it coordination? Is it, Tony's trying to hire 400 people, maybe 500. CN salary, that's great, right? Are you allowed in this time where our unemployment is I think Beth was saying the lowest in how long?
Well, it's 3.5%, and it's just went from like over 20% just down. So we have like not so many unemployed people. And we have a lot of people retiring. So
Yeah. And then Krista, thanks for starting to throw in some resources. I think that's something that as partners in this work, we are hoping there's opportunity for you to find from one another. What are the resources? What are contract opportunities or partnership opportunities? Sharing staff. I know that's been in last year. It was how do we possibly find enough people? Well, send them over from the after school program if they're not running summer camp. So, or if, you know, and if you're not wanting to share your secret sauce of recruitment, that's okay. Because we know that there's a lot out there, but this is a whole group effort trying to make sure we can fill the needs across Oregon, we hope. So thank you, Rachel. And then as we're filling out and populating, feel free to unmute and share some more. I'm gonna take a look at the results over here. Is anyone, I mean, feel free to share out loud as well.
Well, last year through STEM, Portland Metro STEM, they asked for like flyers or some kind of a breakdown from different vendors about what we offer. And it seemed that the response that people got, including math gamers, was that people were more just staying within their own selves or school or districts, and they weren't necessarily looking at an informal space to provide and to come in. And so that's why I said that is, I think that's a big challenge, is to, you know, because I mean, I've worked very diligently on our curriculum and had success, but it's, I don't know if there's a trust issue or just that it was COVID and it was just like, we don't want to bring new people in, or, you know, anyway.
Well, we definitely saw some chaos with school districts and who was in charge of the disbursements within the districts themselves. You know, giving somebody brand new the responsibility was difficult. So we saw some places where that happened, and yet there were many successful school districts in building their partnerships. Katie, wasn't it about 28% of the schools actually had contracts with community-based partners?
Yeah, it
So,
was about
yeah.
33%.
And I think it is particularly difficult. So Eric had put something in the box with rural districts, actually finding ways in which to build the relationships and have outside vendors come. So Eric, are you on? Can you talk a little bit about that? Did he disappear?
We also have Lou, who attended one of our new partner meetings. Welcome, Lou, from Wasco County. And she put in some challenges they had with being able to access space.
Yeah, I think since ODE is so closely tied to this, I think they need to be aware that, you know, having nonprofits do stuff in 100-degree weather outside of a school building is really not best practices. So some districts were great to work with and they let us use sheltered, shaded areas, but others really were not. So I think it would be really nice if we can encourage ODE to partner with nonprofits and somehow have that funding linked to, like, you know, it's okay to have other people involved and other partners involved in your summer programming.
Yes, I will say one of the first drafts we saw for allocation had some specifics around that districts might still have to require a piece of funding themselves, right? They'll get this general fund, but they have to show some investment. And one of our suggestions was, you could actually demonstrate that kind of commitment and match with a partnership. So if you have a partner coming in to provide a service, if you're able to provide transportation and they can use your building, right? That there's some really clear examples of how districts then are incentivized to partner and think creatively about using space and providing services, and not just, well, you've got this, you're using this money already for that, so great, let's add in some more, you know.
And this level of funding that is in the bill is what was spent last year. So there was 250 million. There was a lot of money left on the table last year. So that was unspent. And so we want to make sure that the 150 million gets spent in the best way possible to support children and families.
And yes, Julie, I think you're right that it was a nerve-wracking time for, if we're going to be liable and responsible for what's happening, I don't know that we can do more. And so, what is too bad is, you know, that now I think we see how many programs have been operating and had used emergency childcare guidance, had used, you know, COVID regulations, that it is, it can be a collaborative process, and like what works and how can we meet the expectations and standards of the building.
And we'd like to see more opportunities in locations that don't have opportunities, but also collaborations between CBOs. So there are some interesting ones that are coming up. So I think that, you know, creating more dialogue between partners is something that we'll be spending time doing this summer.
And Natalie brought up the point that because there is less money, and last year, right, it was allocated for the districts on kind of a formula basis, right? Like you'll get this much because this is how many you serve. And with a smaller pot this year, that would get districts less if they do the same thing. And what I'm wondering is Natalie's comment here, that if programs really did spend everything they were given, is there a way for them to get that same amount instead of having to cut back?
We'll bring that to the table, Natalie.
So I am not surprised. Staffing, that was why staffing is the first one on the list. Staffing shortages is a great challenge. Many anticipate. Transportation, I think, is very fair, and then kind of close behind cost for families, outreach, and then issues with building and space. In the second open response, so feel free to continue putting in there, but this is where we, I think, wanted to elevate the conversation that Beth proposed with some innovative projects that we, you know, encourage people to consider, like partnering with housing authorities or looking at bringing about using high school staff as staff for programs that can both get paid and or get credit and increase the capacity of the program. And so is, you know, what else is here that we want to be able to elevate in the conversation? Like Natalie said, programs that ran at full capacity last year would love to be able to run at that same capacity, if not more. And I saw come up early and a couple times here around, with staffing shortages, an increased pay or some other kind of incentive that helps recruit more staff to the field. I don't know, Tony, if you're in a place to speak, but I might call out that one of the conversations we've been having with Tony for a couple months is trying to offer a little bit more, not just pay, but Tony, do you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, the goal would be to try to incentivize people to come and work seasonally. And looking at right now, what we're looking at right now is the capacity to take your seasonal work and build it into a larger career pathway. And I know that there's a lot of initiatives for people that talk about, for programs and camps that talk about, like, what are the benefits of working at a camp and how can you apply it to your resume? I think that we need something even more direct, which is hands-on, maybe career pathway exploration, training and development. Pay is still the meat and potatoes of it though, 100%. So that whatever is allocated within budgets needs to recognize that at the minimum, everyone with inflation is going to need a 7% in a pay increase relative to where they've been at. And the challenge is that, you know, camps seasonally have justifiably leaned on the goodwill and interest of working at camps. Now at a 1% unemployment rate, that's not always possible. People are going to understandably look for jobs and positions that are going to pay them a full-time or potentially living wage. We've been looking at how to do youth to work within the context of assistance in our programs and dramatically scaling that up. So that 400 number for us is a little hyperbolic. 210 of those are teenagers. So, and we're scaling our teenage staff so that they're incredibly redundant. But we can actually do that within the context of our scale. I know that that's harder with programs that operate at a smaller scale, but meaning that like we might have 2 teens equaling 1 within the context of our ratios, so that we can understand and be empathized with the fact that the teens are going to be learning how to be professionals in the context of what they're doing. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you for sharing, Tony. I think, we're always trying to think strategically, big picture. If we can get more recruited now, how can we build their awareness as well? That was brought up, having culturally responsive and trauma informed practices as part of the training for everyone, available, that we're building better people who may find something that they love within this field. And if not, then they're gaining it, right? They're getting really important understanding of what's happening with youth and interacting. So I think, thank you for sharing. And then the other comment I just put in, is it a possibility to offer access to other types of benefits for seasonal or summer staff? Small community-based organizations that don't have the ability to provide insurance, or, I know that was something that came up in conversations around childcare previously. And as many summer programs act as childcare during the summer, might be worth including in the conversation.
We are offering and noticing it's an incentive, and we're getting a lot of parents actually signing up to be camp counselors in the summer, because we're offering free day camp for kids grades K to 5 that are immediate children, that are children of the people working for us. It's also recruiting more teachers actively as an incentive. One of the things we found, but we're still pushing for, trying to get like medical benefits for seasonal staff, we found that our younger staff don't feel as urgent as we thought they would be on wanting those medical benefits, because a lot of them are still on their parents' health plan. We're still actively looking at it, but it's also interesting to see that the feedback is like, nah, I don't really need it. And that's kind of fascinates us a little bit. I don't, that's anecdotal though, so I wouldn't take that as like a data-driven reality.
That's fair. But, Steve put in the chat box as well that we looked at pooling resources to be able to do something like that. And it did get really complicated really fast. And I think that's why at the state level, when they were talking about, oh, well, can you, get them access to Oregon health plan options, right? Do they get like an automatic in because they're a summer seasonal staff? If it is not a long-term solution, it is not always beneficial. But even something like a stipend. So I was at AmeriCorps Vista and I did my year of service, and then I got an education stipend. Maybe you offer a summer stipend for someone that completes their service / job. But, is that model something that both could be an allowable expense and beneficial in recruitment? So what else are we missing? Jeffrey, you mentioned that there's something missing on the scan sheet, which is absolutely possible. We just try to keep it kind of succinct, but
no, it was literally, I messaged Beth, so it's okay.
Okay, great. So is there other comments or questions that you want to elevate? This is a very I would say like moving target of it. We're hoping the funding goes through really soon so we can say, yes, there's action items now. I think there is a great representation in this planning team conversation that is set to happen next week. And yet we know that this is part of a system and a process, and it will probably be much longer than any of us would like until things might happen. But I think our sense of urgency is certainly something we will be bringing to the table. And then using some of this data and what you shared both anecdotally and across the board around having planning time, increasing partnerships.
You know, and I think the sense of urgency from parents. There's always an article every year in the Oregonian about the crisis that parents have. Very recently, there was an article about 3 legislators who basically are not rerunning because of childcare. And so we don't have parent voice, and in the future we need that to actually be able to lift up. So you know, I always say, well, you know, parents work past 2:30, and childcare is a necessity, and so it's really about building that system of early childhood through elementary that needs to happen. But we need parent voice. So if you have parents that have something to say, or you survey your parents about their needs, share that information with us.
Sometimes I do put on my parent hat too. Susan, did you have a question? I think you had raised your hand or comment.
Yeah, it was just a quick comment on that. Another thought, and Beth touched a little bit on that with her follow-up, but it's thinking about back of the umbrella of youth safety, right? With safety and compliance, and that's something is especially where I am at OSU that is part of the planning process and the timing and all of that. So it kind of increases the sense of urgency. One thought I think for this group, and as we continue to move efforts together for collective impact, not just for summer programming, but how do we build a central support here for programs to draw from? They're like bringing in professions for public health and human science to this program and help us with this when we know there is a need for that based on the registration and all of this, especially with pandemic, and we don't have any of the resources to activate, which leaves our, you know, in my case, a lot of my programs, just science communicators, they are not prepared, or neither is in their job description to deal with that. When we are required to accommodate and want to, but we don't have the partners to do that well. So I'm thinking not just summer, but future effort moving ahead. What kind of the central supports can we create as a group who does K-12 programming that we can all draw from, whether it's professional development or, you know, support with more intentional trauma-informed practices and support when we need to train our staff and to kind of come into a program when we need kind of an emergency need. And I'm not going into details, but those things happen when we get put into a position where like legally we have to do A, B, and C. Are we prepared to do this? No. So who do we draw from to make sure that we have plan of action that's beneficial and keeps the safety of everyone in mind, including the staff? So complicated, long thinking. But I think especially when we release money fast for a summer program with not a lot of time to planning, those are the things that we are on a day-to-day fixing and living that really impacts how the program itself. So.
For elevating that. And I think that's one of the, besides the sense of urgency to act, but act responsibly, is thinking about what can we learn. So we were able to collect data last year, and we think it is vitally important for us to give programs time to think strategically about what's happening, but also understand, you know, what did you do that we might be able to learn from in the future? So having good data, actual data about what is happening and how we can learn from that will certainly be part of our proposition, I think, as well.
And if I put my mom hat before I leave, I have to go to another meeting, but I'm going to put my mom hat before I leave here for you, just to go with you, Bethany. We were just having this conversation at our program partners meeting at OSU this week about the lifting of the mandates and masks and vaccinations and all, and how the nuances of the things that they are not thinking of that we know we're going to be dealing with, right? When you put a bunch of middle schoolers and some of them will be wearing masks and some are not, and we need to encourage that everybody has their choice. And I'm trying to tell them all that's their parents' choice. And this is still political, and you cannot tell me that's the same thing as encouraging go wash your hands, because that's doesn't work that way. So my kids are not, they're like, what? My daughter's just like, I'm going to continue to wear masks in school. So we got into this larger conversation about this transition with kids that are not happening, right? They're going from just black to white without much time and preparation for that transition. And these are things that we're going to continue to see as impact results on the camps. And how are we prepared to say when some program has a choice on wear mask and say, well, I can't hear you. Can you take the mask off? So when you talk, or these kinds of things that we know are going to happen that we don't know yet how it's going to unfold, it's kind of the issues they're predicting. And the fact that this, if we saw, I mean, I know that most programs would agree with me, the incident reports and things that I had from last year from all of our programs at OSU were exponentially higher than previous years. And I'm predicting that will be the same this year. And I think I can see it in my kids and my friends' kids, that kind of transition going straight to, and all of a sudden nobody needs to wear a mask and we all go, there will be an impact on that in the way that they behave and that they participate in programs as well. And I don't think we're talking about that and getting strategies put in place to deal with it.
It's a really good point, Susan. I'm thinking of, yes, that's in my mom hat. What happens on the playground and what happens in program when kids start teasing one another. Well, why are you still wearing your mask? Oh, come on. My mom says, blah, 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 blah. Real dangerous slope.
Yeah. So with those issues that we've even had before, right? We know we need support. How do we bring in support? Like in my case, for the University of Public Health and Human Sciences, students that are helping me create a safe space. And if we needed the added help because we have a disclosure of a participant that needs some extra help, and we can draw from those people to come in and provide that safe environment for everyone. It's one thing. And this is just arguments at all. It existed. It's not like it didn't exist before. It's just completely augmented. Yeah. So thank you for that. I hope everyone have a good day. I have to jump in another meeting, but we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Yes. And thank you, Marcus, for responding on my behalf. And yes, Wade, you're right. Sorry. For me, I am a mom, so I wear it as a caregiver and people who are concerned about what's happening in space with youth. So sorry. Yes, there's multiple caregiver, parental. I think I was just realizing that it's been an hour and we still have another hour slated. And if you're not Tony walking around outside, now would be maybe a good time to like get up and stretch. And maybe we want to play another video or take time to just kind of think about, then we're going to have a little transition to the next conversation, looking at the work of a network and how we work collectively for that better together collaborative mission. So we are going to have some more discussion time in a little bit. But are there any other thoughts or questions, please, that we bring forward before we do a short transition to the next topic?
Well, I'd like to hear from anyone that wants to share something that they're working on or doing that they want others to hear.
Well, we're really excited about, we started a small teen leadership program last year to address the funding or the staffing shortages that we had with our summer camps. And that's gone really well. And now this year, we're working on social emotional learning training for those teen counselors. And so that we can have teens implementing social and emotional learning lessons with younger youth. And I'm really excited about that. We're using a great curriculum out of the University of Minnesota SEL curriculum. And so I'm really excited about that and hoping to be able to implement that more this summer with paid leadership training and SEL learning, and then also having them work at the clubs and camps.
Yeah, the
I've
University
started
of Minnesota has got a lot, they have like top-notch things. I've looked at their curriculum.
I started a program because kids were asking me, I'm a small business. I'm a disabled veteran and a woman, and I started locally and grew it organically. And then COVID hit us hard because the schools closed and we were after school program. But I've always had kids ask me, oh, so you run this business, so you founded this business. And with the entrepreneurship things we've been learning with Venture Labs, I started a segment on running your own business, and kids love it. And this is first through fifth, but they have so many questions, and I let a lot of it go kind of like I make it student centered more. So some of the things we do, we just kind of comes from what they think or ask.
And Andrew, you want to share?
Yeah, this is something that we did last year, and we are working with our mental health specialist that is on our staff now to we're working with Lane County, Lincoln County, Jackson County right now on doing trauma-informed and resiliency-based programs. We're offering 1 week again this summer. And even though Lutherwood was founded as a faith-based organization, these weeks that we're providing, we're not bringing in anything religious or faith. It's all about, resiliency and building confidence, and these are these are focused on middle school through high school grades. So that's happening in August at our camp.
Thanks for sharing. Tony's got his hand up also. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, and along the line of the youth to work or teen staffing, we've added a position specifically for 14 and 15-year-olds, not because they're actually necessary within the context of our ratios or scaling our programs, because we consider it an investment, and it's bringing them in at $15 an hour for a maximum of 4 hours a day, kind of the beginning and the end of the day. Because our goal would be to be like, okay, there's 150 of those kids coming in a given summer. They're going to be more functional 16 and 17-year-old staff 2 years from now. And then those 16 and 17-year-old staff, once they turn 18, they will be people with 4 years under their belt and potentially be functional for a seasonal span of like 3 summers within the context of going to college. I consider that fourth summer something where they're going to do their internship relative to their degree or something like that, right? So the goal would be to, eventually build more than simply a base for us, but maybe build beyond our capacity, that base of potential seasonal staff that could actually go to other camps and programs beyond the scope of trackers.
That's great. And I don't know that you can see the chat box.
4-year plan. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think you broke up a little bit. In the chat box, you'll say Wade put in that's a really critical experience. And I said, Wade, you should send some people over to Tony. It's up in Metro, Wade's Northeast. It'll be great partnership. There you go.
That would be awesome.
Well, yeah. There are, sorry, my phone rang. I think that the locations of programs, that there may be some additional partnerships like that that are here. So we'll see if we can do some matchmaking. And then those of you that work closely in schools with middle school students, knowing that there are opportunities that are going to be created would be fantastic. And how about, can we, OregonASK will do a little sharing about some of the projects. So Rachel can talk about CoLab. That's super fun. So it's going to be the Summer of the Arts.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
I think so. Talk.
Yeah, I can speak briefly about CoLab. We are doing a really fun project that has started this spring that's going to go into summer. And what it is Prism Arts, which is something that we've been doing for a while. Some of you are familiar with it as a curriculum, but it is all about process-based arts. So exploring all different types of art. We have 4 separate different curricula that explore everything from like sound and movement to 2D and 3D visual art to performance. And CoLab is the service learning component of it, which allows kids to then explore what kind of service they would like to provide in their community. It's their choice. The curriculum helps to support facilitation of youth-led work, and youth can use their experiences with the arts to express their interests, to reach the community, and to work on solving issues that they see. So it's like other service learning, it's lots of research, lots of reflection, lots of consideration, and also an opportunity for really fun presentations and projects. So we will be continuing to pilot that work. We have a cohort 1, and our cohort 2 will begin training for the summer later this month.
So the training is March 15th. I just remember that. And then a little bit later, we will also have the National Youth Leadership Council. So we're working with them, and Julie Bascom-Rogers is going to do some training on service learning. So that will happen. We have another series of training that are coming up. Just completed 40 people. So Stephanie, you were in the cohort. Maybe you could just share a little bit about the cohort and what happened.
Sure. Yeah, I just completed the inclusion cohort, and it was a great experience. And I really like that there is talk about making a second part to it just to increase what we learned from it. But I loved that it went through the background of inclusion and really gave history to how, you know, education and the field has changed in the last even 10 years, but then also showed how we can integrate it and what pieces we can use within our programs, which I know that's a big piece that I've been pushing on, making sure our trainings are bringing in actual physical ideas and pieces to bring back to our programs. Because so many of the educators come and they learn the background, but then how do you implement it into your program? And it was great that we were able to look at different resources, learn from each other within the cohort, and then take back a bunch of resources to be able to provide to our teams and offer it to the kids that we're teaching, right? So everything from fidgets to how you can implement within your program different activities to help with the inclusion services that we need. And we're having a hard time because our capacity is, you know, are slowly rising, and our numbers are 1 to 15. And we have different skilled educators that need those experiences and those resources to make a program that's running smoothly. So I think it was a great opportunity. I know there was talk about it coming back and running again in the fall possibly. And I think that's a great thing to share out for other educators to take part in, because it was a great learning experience.
I'm happy to hear that, yes, and I want to thank Kelsey who worked with Kat King, who was a presenter from North Carolina, and it just all came together. It was beautiful. So, anybody else have something to share?
Well, maybe now might be a good time to make sure that we get a chance to introduce Moises. In
Yes.
case you haven't yet met him, we have a new Vista, and we're very excited. So Moises, would you introduce yourself and let people know who you are?
Yeah, sure. So, hey everyone, my name is Moises. My pronouns are he, him. And yeah, I am the new communications Vista with OregonASK. So I just do like the social media and I help with like outreach stuff, communications and all that. So yeah, really excited to be here.
And we're going to be sticking Moises on people throughout the spring to set up conversations. So for one, get him knowing more about the programs that we've worked with, what's going on in those programs, and help us do some highlights so that we can tell the story of like what's happening right now. We only get to have so many conversations and sharing, but we want to make sure that we're doing all we can to elevate some of these opportunities. So all the stuff that we've heard today, would make a perfect little blurb about your program, and we want to be able to make sure and share that. So we will be connecting you, or feel free to reach out to Moises if you want to set up a conversation and share a little more about what you do.
Yeah, we're excited to have him with us. And we really are focusing on our communication and thinking about how we develop and continue to deepen our relationships with programs in a two-way conversation process. And so Bethany and I have done a couple of new partner orientations that have been fabulous and fun because they've been smaller groups and new people, and talking about the work of the network and how we're going to try to build the network across the state. So we've got a couple. Moises is going to work on an opportunity that we're going to really roll out in the fall with basically an ambassador program. So having people who live far away actually have deeper knowledge around the work of the network and be representatives in their local communities. So Rachel and Moises, and I think there was one other staff person who sort of been working on those ideas on how we can actually do that. And so, yeah, so maybe Bethany, now's the time to pull up the building a network.
Yeah, Katie, can you re-share the slides for us? And thanks for everyone who was sharing. I was just, we're kind of jumping ahead, or this is maybe, I'm gonna put in the chat box that there is an OregonASK timeline. I think that if you haven't ever found it, it hits a few of the highlights that we've talked about with some of our new partners, and might just be a fun scroll through with some pictures and stuff. So
and it is a work in progress.
Yes, so if you see something that needs to be added, feel free to let us know. We wanted to spend a little time, I think in our last partner meeting, we looked at what does it mean to be a network, and that most networks have kind of a shared vision, but doing a little more defining on where we might want to see our network going, and how you as partners are part of actively moving the work. So recognizing that we really think of this as a collaborative process, and that in that collaborative, it's that we are working together, but there's, it notes in this definition, some form of leadership, so that someone has to say, this is where we're going. Otherwise, you kind of just become a scattered dot, right? And that's where, the image of what might a network look like, it looks very different at different stages. and with different objectives. And so when you're starting and you're building a network and you're making connections, you are just, you know, some people that have this connection. So they're working on something. There's some people over here and they're connected via Tony, who probably hired their staff in his summer program. Or you get as you evolve and you organize to this kind of self-organizing state, right? Where you've got teams and people working towards something in connective, collaborative work. And where you really see things shifting, big picture, is when there is a core systems shifting network. And what Beth has seen, and even I have seen in the last almost 10 years with the network, is that there is shifts in big ways. That while the allocation of summer funding the last 2 years has been single time, right? There is a huge recognition that the importance of summer, the need for investment, and how important it is to be partnered and collaborative in that effort, that it cannot just be one single person, one single type of organization. While Oregon has amazing outdoor recreation, not everyone can go and get everything they need from outdoor recreation, but everyone should have a dose, right, of something. So I think that's where we see there has been shifts, but we want to make sure and sustain this work as a network and as collaborative partners.
And I do think that, I mean, as dreadful as the pandemic has been and how difficult it's been, it's also been a time of opportunity. So the recognition of the importance of community-based organizations and the importance of childcare have never been as apparent as they are now. And so, you know, on the national level, we have someone who's continually saying to us, seize the moment. Like this is the time. I mean, who would have thought that OMSI would run childcare? So for, you know, what were there, 120 kids there, Steve, that were in childcare at OMSI?
Yeah, daily. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, you know, we all played many different kinds of roles, but I do think that we are somewhere between self-organizing and system shifting because of the things that have happened in the last couple of years. I've been doing lots of reading and studying and talking with some national experts around collaboration. And so we wanted to bring a couple of these things to you. So then there's another, next slide. Katie, yeah. So this is the definition of networks and the organizing model, because every one of you also has other networks. So Sherry Burks has a whole group of other childcare providers and to her connections to school. So in many ways, each of you represent multiple networks. We're a network of networks. And there are lots of people who are not at the table. So this is, I'm just going to give you a minute to read this, not read it to you. Yes.
And this came from something that Beth found recently that she is looking forward to sharing with around collective mind and really building network capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Focused way.
Yeah. And I do believe in the fall, we're going to return to the original relook at the mission vision of the Oregon network. So sort of expect that to come next fall. But I do think that it's been interesting. So there are some people who have been part of the network for 15 years since it started. And the mission and vision have not changed. So there was something good that was done in 2005 when the network first started. But it's how do we move forward together as a network and the purpose that we have. So definitely the vision. So the next slide, Katie. So what Collective Mind has is thinking about the different, and a part of what I have another purpose to this, is that on the national level, we have this dynamic 50-state network. And it is very unusual, certainly unusual, that a foundation has funded a network for 15 years. And actually, the first network was 20 years. So Zelda Waymer in South Carolina was the first network. But we haven't really been able to think about and explain and actually document the work of the network. There have been a couple of failed attempts with evaluators, and we participated in several of those. But I think that this really speaks to the function of the network, this particular process. And so we're gonna explore it more. We may bring the person who's in charge of Collective Mind in to actually help us think through some of this.
This is a great visual. The next slide has the text a little bit bigger in case you actually want to read those definitions. I love the conversation. Beth introduced me to the person that had come up and started the business around this. And when she was describing why she felt this was necessary, it was like, I was part of a network for a couple years before I realized what is a network? What does it mean? What does it do? And I think that's very fair for anybody that's popped into an OregonASK meeting at some point and been like, oh, you provide training. It's like, well, yes, and oh, well, you do day at the Capitol, or you send out policy updates. Yes, and right, there's just like a lot of stuff and a lot of pieces. And so I think this gives a great framework for thinking about what's the work that we're doing, what's our function, how are we organized, what is our capacity to move the dial or create a sustaining movement and partnership. So
we definitely all rallying around funding. So that definitely, I mean, the reality is that community-based organizations and after-school programs, and yet it's parents that are the primary source of support for organizations for after school. And what we know is that children and youth that can actually, that need it the most, don't have access. And so that's going to continue to be part of our conversation as we work through next year in some of this process.
And the next piece of this is that I think Kelsey helped us make a little activity for sharing some feedback on what do you see as one of the greatest values of being part of OregonASK, or what does this network bring to Oregon, to our partners and everyone who participates. So Kelsey put in the chat box that you can answer your question here on the Mentimeter. And if you've never used it and you have questions, Katie's going to demonstrate what you'll be seeing. You just put in a word, right? Or put in your answer. It can be a statement or a word, and submit it, so that we're gonna create a picture of the answers here. So we'll take a minute or two to do that one. And then Katie, are you going to be able to share, or does Kelsey share? Kelsey, you want to pop in and help here? There we go. So these are our answers. And feel free to unmute if you would like to comment more, or I reckon there's collaboration and community and partnership. Feels like there's some around that. Data collection. Katie, did you respond? No, someone else loves data. Yay. And I think part of this is an exercise around, do you feel there is a value for showing up, for being connected, for getting information? And, you know, we want to help be building. What is it that we should really increase our work in? Or if this is the greatest impact, great, let's continue and make sure we can get broader, get bigger, get more people involved in it. If we don't need to lead, you can help us be leaders in some of this. And maybe, Kelsey, is there another question too that we can get people to start populating as well?
Yeah, it's using the same link. You'll just hit right below it. It says next question.
Thank you. And thanks, Marcus, for your comments in the chat box. You can also unmute, but you might be like in your building and their background noise.
Oh, no, I'm at home this morning. I'm chilling. Got my yerba mate and just hanging out right now before I have to go into the chaos. But yeah, no, I love the community. I like just knowing that there are so many people around the state that care about the same thing that I do, that everyone's approaching it, that this thing in their own way, in a lot of in similar ways. And, you know, I feel like it's just really cool to hear y'all talk about like what y'all are doing for us on the state level, and then, you know, this networking thing. And then when you get to do like smaller trainings and stuff like that, it just, I don't know, it just makes me feel connected. It makes me like that community part is really important to me. And it just lets me know that, like, yeah, there's other people that care about this, and they're doing it in their community, and we're all just working to like make our communities better places to like live and learn and grow and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Marcus.
And I think it is great. As when we've been in between slides and looking at all the little boxes that are on our screen and thinking about maybe someday getting to see people in person again, it's exciting. And looking at all the faces, all the boxes, the names that are here, and it's amazing to see how many new names and faces. I noticed, you know, Brian from Portland Tennis and Education. And I was like, I'm so excited that Brian is here. I've never met Brian, but Portland Tennis and Education was connected with us, and Stephanie Haas was a nationally recognized, you know, 30 under 30 after school professional. So it's wonderful to see how the network cycles and continues to grow and bring in new and exciting opportunities and partnerships. And I think there is room for growth, right, in the work that we do, and expanding to others in the field. I think that's what we saw during COVID. If you've probably heard us say this, that the world of camps, and we had not met Tony prior to COVID, and we got connected, and we got connected with Oregon Alliance of Camps, and building out new partners, because we are kind of all in the same field. We have a specialty or a specific region, but we are supporting families and youth. So does anyone else want to share their responses to either of the questions, I guess, here? Sherry does not see hers posted. Do we need to update, or is there we go. Yes. I was like, nobody wants to answer that question, but they did. Thank you for saying something, Sherry. Is this available for others to look at on their own to scroll through, or is it just what Katie's sharing? Thanks. Thanks.
Yes, participants at the end, they can type in their email and have it sent.
Okay.
To the box.
Great. Because I think we'll definitely be using this as we consider, the conversations and planning opportunities ahead, and thinking about where can we grow the network and have identify some really feasible goals and activities for upcoming.
One of the things that I appreciate, Bethany, is that I just put that it was 1-800-OregonASK because of flexibility, and I feel like the ability of the organization to move quickly is really such a positive. Like if you are seeing something right away, don't hesitate to reach out to OregonASK because it has been super helpful to myself and to the programs that I run, and just getting a quick answer or getting some things moved up a little bit farther up the chain has certainly been helpful, I think, to the industry and to all of us in Oregon. So just a huge thank you, but that's what I put, that I really don't want to see that change. Like when sometimes you have growth, you lose that 1-800 ability to just get something quickly. And that's been such a great part of the relationship that I feel like I have with OregonASK.
Thank you, Sherry.
And I would say that is also vice versa, that the wonder of partners is that we do the same thing to you and call you up and say, hey, we've got a survey. Hey, we've got an opportunity for money. Can you talk with your legislators? Hey, can you try out this curriculum and let us know, is it any good? What is it like when you implement? That this is a back and forth, a collaborative process. So being able to have those relationships and opportunities to do that with others, I think that it's great it's not just us, right? We bring in new people, you get excited about the work, and you're able to share that with others as well.
Well, and I think the variety of things, like I was just looking at Kelsey in her box and thinking, well, one of the things that Kelsey did recently is work with the University of Arizona. They came to the camps conversation with a NASA curriculum, and there was a Saturday that happened at Airway Science where there was some review of the curriculum being developed. I mean, so it's always new, it's always different. And we're hoping that we can actually share more, like doing program visits. And I really think that there's something about the need for the developing new leaders. So one of the things we had Moises do as part of his Vista, we have got this sheet of things to read and learn. And he watched a video series that was done in California on the history of after school and brought that up in a conversation with me. And so I'm going to reach out to Temescula that developed it and see if we can't do something with that, because we're going to have so many new program people that are going to come into the field. We need to develop them as leaders and as sort of the future of after school. So I'm going to use your idea.
And the next kind of piece of the conversation and question is centered around supporting quality and how we do that through partnership and quality. Sorry, I think you already answered that question. So just wanted to make sure that we give kind of an update on like what are some of these pieces of work that is happening within the realm of quality after school, because some of them are very specific to what type of program you are and how this relates to you. But more importantly is these are all pieces that shape how people think about expanded learning and after school and summer programs, and what it could mean for you, right? How we kind of become a shared network and partnership. So did you want to talk, Beth, about some of our bullets on updating and what's happening with?
Yeah, so 2005, OregonASK and all partners that were at the table at the time developed standards that went out across the state, came back, had revisions, and then went on to competencies. And yet the training that we provide is aligned to the Center for Career Development at PSU. And the reason for that is that if you're licensed, you have to have so many hours of credits submitted into the registry. The other reason is there is no other system that actually acknowledges somebody who works in the field of youth development. So we want to do revisions to the standards and competencies. There are going to be changes at the Center for Career Development, and they're moving from the core knowledge categories into competency-based system of training. So we've been working with the Office of Early Learning. So this goes through children up through age 12. And yet it hasn't, nobody's really figured out how do you actually assess competencies. So we had a little discussion with them about that. And then very, very wonderful, actually, is school age licensed childcare rules. And so there are some people who are on the call here who have participated, but we pulled together and been working, and we have been working on and wanting a clear set of rules for school age programs that are licensed. And it's been 11 years and we are going to have them. So that's pretty fantastic to actually, we can see that is going to actually really happen, and have been working, and the Office of Early Learning will roll them out, but the dialogue has been great, and we feel listened to. So that's a good thing.
And it I guess as we continue to sit in very different spaces where people have different rules they have to follow, different guidance, different, if you're a school district, you have school district policies. And I think though that it's services that are provided to youth, whether you're in a library, in a camp, in a park, in a school building, that you're still wanting to provide a good experience, right? That you want kids to be engaged, you want to offer a safe space, a reliable opportunity, someone's going to show up and know that's where their child's going to be. So just, that whether you have to follow school age rules or not, that ideally those will be reflected in the standards that you could use to say, great, how are we doing? Or in the competencies, are our staff adequately trained and prepared? Or, have we achieved what we want by sending them through this training? Because it's, hopefully it's all one similar picture, that they're safe opportunities, they're engaging for youth. And so that's the kind of the goal that we have, that there's not going to be one size fits everything, but that whatever it is that fits you looks really similar to the pieces over here. And this is where, when we did work around the components of quality a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, and we did a video series on this is after school. And after school being kind of this, here's what it might look like. And that if it's after school, it's going to have, you're going to have a component of inspiring youth dreams, but you have to have good professional development. You have to have some sort of system and structure. you probably need to have some family engagement, and there needs to be, oh goodness, there's one more, consideration for something else. Anyone know our 5 components of quality better than I do? It'd be great if you did. Oh, right, partnership. It's school and community partnership. So that those, are gonna look different if you are a library working with the Parks and Rec or a school with champions. But you'll probably have consideration of what are our policies? How are staff trained? How do families know about getting their kids signed up or when they have to pick them up? And what's going on in the program? So, that's there are these big pieces that are going to look different in every program, but that you consider them, that you look at them occasionally, that you have something that supports that. That's what we ideally want to see. And that it's not a mystery of how do we get there or what does it mean, but it's something that you can envision and you can build and you can use tools, that there are tools easily accessible of, is this a culturally responsive and sustaining environment? Is this a culturally responsive curriculum that we're providing? So that those tools and resources and connection opportunities are all available and not a mystery of how can you get to where you really want to be and who needs to be part of the process. That it's not just you filling out some paperwork of we're doing this, this, and this, right? There's staff involved, there's community partners, there's parents, there's youth, there's all sorts of means for feedback and growth together. So that was my little soapbox on why should we all care about quality, even though we're totally different types of programs. And that there is, another policy update that we kind of missed earlier around central background registry. So there was a bill that whether you are a recorded program or a license exempt ERDC provider, you will have to have staff go through the central background registry, which is what Oregon does for licensed childcare programs, including school age programs. It is different than anything a school district does. If you think you might, nope, the school district does something different. This is one that has specific checks with DHS and allocations, not just being found guilty.
And there are still many issues with background checks between schools and CBOs and multiple ones. So this is just the sort of surface, because we see that a licensed teacher can't work in an after-school program, even though she's already gone through TSPC and it has the background check. So there are still lots of things that need to be worked on, but there's a beginning piece of it, and there are going to be general rules that will go out, and that doesn't mean that the conversation stops. And we also, we clearly see that ELD is thinking about how the people who go out and license, so for those of you that are licensed, the licensing agents actually will have better training. So we're excited about that. Yes, timely out of state, they're adding staff for that. And I think that they don't really realize how big the world of after school and summer is. So.
But here's a plug we'll just put out there that people could join in the CBR just by themselves. If you have a program site though, then it's free. If it's not actually free unless you have a specific program that you're working under. So we're still working and have made some suggestions to the ELD around, well, what if everyone was just allowed, or if you have kind of like an umbrella organization that programs, or high school seniors could put themselves into this system and then already be ready to go for the next couple of years. So there's work. And if you don't know if you are a recorded program or not, then you're probably not. But in case you're wondering if you should be, there is
The rule of thumb is if you're a school or a government agency, you don't have to be licensed or recorded. So.
And Tony, there will be they have proposed there will be at least a grandfathering in process. So if you're already working in a program, you would have an additional period of time to get everybody through. You would be expected, though, once that grandfather period is over, that they would be at least enrolled before working with youth unsupervised. And that you.
So if they're functionally supervised, they can be not enrolled yet. That because the question is like, you got to onboard staff like tomorrow because you lost somebody.
Right. And what they were saying is that there's usually like a 24 to 48 hour initial processing where if you've not been convicted in your local, then they'll say, yes, you're fine to be conditionally enrolled in a program supervised until it comes through. So that would be the kind of like, yes, you would be allowed to hire and have them shadow or do training initially until it was finalized. And
what about youth actually? Because under 18 would not apply to this, then they can't get background checks, obviously.
No, they cannot. And that's still a conversation between school age programs and the early learning division, especially in summer programs. High school counselors are a great help. And yet in licensed childcare, anyone under 18 is absolutely not allowed to be alone with.
Right.
So
in the context that we're talking about, youth are not even like the teens that we work with are never really alone with kids. So functionally, that's not an issue for us.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I know that would affect summer programs who utilize and things like that.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit, but I think yes, it would impact some of the programs that utilize, your staffing or your programs that you cannot have high school youth alone in. And then there's like all these, sorry, we're getting into some of the weeds here, of like sight and sound. If you've got a group in a field or in a gym, like, does that count as everyone being supervised by one adult with there being multiple kind of high schoolers or things happening? So if you're within sight and sound, then it's just fine. But these are all really good conversations about like what realistically is happening in programs, what's possible, and is there a reason that we should have a system set up that would allow adequately trained 3 years of experience high school seniors who are 17 to be able to walk a group of kids from the gym to the playground or across the field and go this way. So it's an ongoing conversation, but one we think that's worth having. So other questions about that? So sorry for my long soapbox, but I will say that if you're interested in any more of getting into more of those conversations, the table is open. I think our next slide is around potentially the workforce survey. Yeah. And that this was our next endeavor, was to say, if we know what kind of things are happening in program, well, what's the need for getting qualified staff? Because there's a huge turnover, there's not enough. Well, then it turns out that there's a national survey happening and that we might be able to use some of their data. So Katie sat in on a wonderful webinar and offered to share a little bit of information about the survey that's happening, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bethany. Yes, it's my turn to talk again, which means that there's another survey. Cycle never ends. But this is a new national survey that's just launching right now that's specifically about the after school and summer workforce, and it is called the Power of Us survey. And it is nationwide, and the goal of this survey is to better understand the people who work in after school and summer programs. And the survey really hopes to map the workforce, identify trends, inform practice and policy making, and understand the pathways and opportunities that support the field. And we really feel that this information is critical. 10 years ago, OregonASK conducted a workforce survey of our own, and we published a full report. So this new survey will not only tell us what the workforce looks like now, it's also going to allow us to compare back and highlight what has changed and what maybe hasn't changed in Oregon's after-school workforce in the past 10 years. So we're hoping to collect responses from Oregon throughout the spring and summer from this survey, and hopefully have Oregon-specific results available to inform legislative proposals in next year's long session. We may also be complementing this survey with a few additional research pieces of our own that are more targeted to Oregon. But for now, this survey is live. You can go to the website on the slide or use the QR code to learn more and to take the survey. It should take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and it is for anyone and everyone who currently works or volunteers with youth in any capacity outside of the regular school day, or has worked or volunteered in the past 5 years. The survey can be done anonymously, though you do have the option to share contact information if you would like. And there is also a monthly drawing. Every month, 10 participants will be randomly selected to receive a $100 Amazon gift card. The earlier you complete the survey, the more chances that you'll have to win. So you'll hear more about this from us, but if your organization is youth serving, please go ahead and take this survey when you have a chance and pass it along to everyone else in your organization. We really want to collect as much information about the Oregon after school workforce as we can.
And they have been, they've agreed, I believe, to give us the Oregon data early so that we can take it and prepare materials prior to the next legislative session.
Yeah, that is our hope. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me today or at any point.
Thanks for putting in the chat box, Marcus, the link here. You can follow it. We'll send it out. And sorry, we're getting a little tight on time. So we were planning a little bit more. Well, I was planning a little bit more of some of the time to talk about what's coming up, but Beth had shared some of them already. There's a slide for this. I did want Kelsey to spend a minute to talk about the top section though on online opportunities.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Bethany. So I'll keep this quick. I know we're running out of time here. So at OregonASK here, we are shifting and scaling our professional development training lineup and expanding what we are able to offer programs. We'll be offering synchronous, asynchronous, and hybrid blended learning, professional development, and training. We'll be utilizing a learning management system in order to do this. Our first hybrid offerings will be a series of trainings for program managers at varying stages of program development. So keep an eye out on your email. We're hoping to launch this by the end of March, or we will launch this by the end of March, and we will be communicating with you that way.
Thanks, Kelsey. So keep your eye out. There's lots coming. The last, I think it's the last slide or one more. Oh, there's one more. So training series we're proposing in lieu of, meaning we will not be offering in-person conferences this spring. Those of you, thank you, that responded to our survey said not necessarily ready yet. Virtual is still a lot easier access. So we'll be doing 1 hour trainings or webinars Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. And there will be a whole slew of opportunities, including kind of a STEM focus, and then ones looking at kind of summer management, things that that you'll want to make sure you've got ready for programming. And then just to highlight, there is money that is still being decided what's going to happen, as far as I know, as far as we know, around the 2-week pre-K summer camps at Title I schools, 11 million for culturally specific and STEM after school programs. And then I had joined the Career Connected Learning design team. And I think there will be some great opportunities for highlighting out of school time partners within that work and getting people more connected. So the rest of our upcoming dates for meetings and everything else is on our last slide. We'll make sure and send all of the RSVP and links to everyone. And don't forget, you will get all of this information up to date in your newsletter or training updates that come out over the next couple months. So question, comments? I'm sorry, we're a minute late.
11:01. Good job, Bethany.
So close. And if you haven't yet, I would love for you to unmute and say hello or goodbye. And thanks for coming. The great question, Lou. The ESSER resources. There is the summer ones are going to districts. The after school ones, 2.2 million will be going through STEM hubs. So you might want to call Christy. And 9 million will be going actually, theoretically, to community organizations, but we're still not sure on if it will be through districts, education service districts, or a particular fiscal.
And we have an upcoming conversation, so we'll know soon.
Yes, and keep you posted. So
thanks so much, everyone.